So good evening, everybody. Today we'll be talking about next chapter in already we have finished two chapters. So today we'll be talking about colonialism, like the colonialism or the rule by the European empires or the colonial empires that we have the British East India Company and the British rule. So all these things we just during Indian national movement you might have studied about how. So you might have studied about like how these institutions have, sorry, how the colonial mentality have been going on. And today, so we'll be addressing about how this thing works. So what is colonialism? So basically, it colonialism anywhere else. This has been studied through human experiences and how the human beings have suffered or went through different changes or went through different political prospects or went to different political pressures during the colonial rules or the rule by an entity which do not belong to the geographical area. So so basically, like, you all know what sovereignty is, right? So if we talk about what sovereignty, so here we are talking about the sovereignty or the authority superimposed by an outside element on a certain geographical states or nation states. So this colonialism was mainly propagated by the colonial colonies or the empires, mostly known as ancient Greeks, Romans, Ottomans, and Europeans. They kind of started this mission on to finding, as they just saw maintaining colonies or maintaining power over any other geographical entity as a status symbol. So that's why the expeditions have begun enormously with the European countries, and these European countries have started exploring and finding sea routes to various other countries. So this, in a way, led to the development of modern capitalistic order. So the capitalistic society that we live in and the interconnected world that we live in has paved, like the colonialism has paved the way for this capitalistic order. And upon that, the improvement in technology and the this invention of fast sailing ships have led these European colonial entities to propagate, to move, to expedite very fastly. So before that, the restriction was that there was no proper sailing ships, and the sailors who were on an expedition to find new routes, discover new sea routes, discover new areas, have been the lost. And these colonial empires have also been putting lot of what do we call investment in this in such expedition because they see it as a pride. Okay, like they just wanted to say that we have these many colonies under us, so that's why we are to be called as a powerful nations. So this was their main what do we call agenda to start up this new concept, a new aggressive mode of colonialism. And colonialism refers to process of European settlement and political management over what areas over Asia, America, Africa, and Australia. So colonialism is nothing but the European settlement in these areas. So how do they settle? They settle by exerting pressure, exerting the political power, by controlling the economic power. So in such a way, by cutting short or being a neck throat competition to economic and political spheres, see, these colonial European empires have established their authority. So now colonial possession of England was India, that was exploited nearly 200 years. So India, you might have already known 1757, they have come 1947 with the Mountbatten Plan, and they have led to over these 200 years the enormous drain of wealth have happened. All these things you might have seen. So the colonial possession of England was that India was exploited nearly for 200 years. So this is how the colonial empires have exerted their uh, power on the colonies. Now, let us understand what is the meaning and nature and definition of colonialism. So, colonialism is nothing but it's defined as a domination of people of one territory over that of another, which affected its people's life, including social, economic, and political. So, what happens in this definition is colonial domination or colonial settlement is nothing but some outside country will come to a geographical entity, some other place, they will settle there, they will control the economic activities in that state, they will control the political activities in that state, they'll control the social activities in that state. So overall they think it's their in the name of exerting all such pressures, they will be draining your energy, sorry, draining your wealth. They'll be looting the wealth, they'll be looting all your raw materials and use these raw materials for their development, for their industrial development, for improving their per capita income. So this is how the colonialism is defined as. And what happens in such ways, the sovereignty of the colony. So colonial empire is the one who settles in a geographical entity. These geographical entities are came to be known as colonies. So these colonies are being lost of their sovereignty because these colonial empires will become their sovereign power, means outside rule. So they are the sole entity who exerts the power from being an outside agent. And colony originates from the word Latin, which is called as colonia. And colonus means a place for agriculture and a farmer. So shifting peak of the people of the colonial power. So in a way, what used to happen is like you can ask this question like what, how do this colonial empire settle down in colonies? So what happens are like how do they exert pressure on political or economic sphere? Means you can ask, you can understand that these colonial empires, they will send their original settlers, they will send their citizens to these colonies. So these colonies, these original citizens will come to these colonies and they settle there and they will be called as a settlers. So upon a time, these settlers will become the main power holders and they will be what do we call, they will be controlling the power, so they will be managing the power. So this is how they take over the economic, political and social sphere of the colonies. Now stable settlers exploiting it economically and also preserving political proximity to their land of origin. So what happens is this, as the colonies have been exploited, these settlers will exert their power and they will exploit the colonies economically and also try to grab the power or try to hold the power as much as possible. And but in spite of doing all such things, they will still be loyal to their original citizen, original motherland or fatherland that they go by. So this is how the colonialism is in a way that it is very draining for the colonies because they get exploited economically, they get exploited politically, they get exploited socially, and above that the development that whatever happens, it happens in the colonial empires which have ruled or which have occupied those colonies. So this is how indirectly it's like eating upon like somebody else. It's a very, it's a very disgusting topic, like if you look at it also, uh, it's like they come from outside, they get hold of my land, they get hold of all the things, all the power, all the structure that is already existing in the colonies. They change as per their thing. They even divide the locals in the name of either could be religion or gender or be anything or whatever the class that they goes on in. So this is how the colonial empires strategically breaks the colonies so that the unity will be uh, unit. It takes years to get that unity or might not take years even to get that unity. So this is how the things go on. Then the history of colonial empire in history attacks cruel people. So what happens is So the history of colonialism is a history of cruel attacks on native people by the foreigners. So the colonialism has always been violent in nature because the settlement doesn't happen peacefully, right? So if you go to a colony and ask them that, okay, fine, I'm gonna control you from now, which original citizen, original settler would say, oh, yeah, sure, please occupy us and please exploit us. No, right? So this is going to take a hard bloodshed, and the cruel attacks would be done on the native people by these colonies, by the colonial empire. So this is not a peaceful transition. So that is what the author is trying to say. So this generally doesn't happen as a peaceful transition, but rather very crucial. I mean, you can see the bloodshed that goes on here. And the another exam definition is given by Roger Tignor. He says that the essence of colonialism, this one, the essence of colonialism is the existence of colonies that is by definition ruled contrarily from different territories like protectorates or informal spheres of influence. Then Jürgen Osterhammel, he says that colonialism is a study of relationship between native majority and powerful minority of the foreign invaders. Then the basic exploiting nature of the colonial rulers who ruled from distant metropolis made colonized people's life bitter. They ruled with brutal force, also rejected cultural compromise with the colonial population. So, what is happening in this colonialism, this author has beautifully explained. So, it says like it is a kind of relationship, the power parity that exists between the original citizens, the native community, and the colonial invaders, and also the exploiting nature of colonial rulers ruled from distance made the colonies very exploited and made their lives very saddening and bitter. So this rule with brutal force, because the transition was not simple, the transition was harsh, and they also had been a cultural compromise of the natives by the settlers, by the foreigners. So this is how sad the colonialism would lead to. First of all, they'll take your land, then they'll take your economy, they'll take your power, then they'll take your culture, then they'll take your development and exploit you to the maximum thing, and their countries will be developed. So this is how the colonialism is all in all happens. Then two nations, two notions to colonialism. So there are two notions to colonialism. First one is a broader sense. Second one is a narrower sense. So if we look at from the narrow point of view, the colonialism assigns a way of control solely for managing and exploiting the raw materials. So why do you think that these colonies will come to your place and settle? They just don't come because their population is huge or something. Of course, the population, ever growing population is one of the feature, but the resources that your country have, the resources that these colonies have, and in a way, how these resources will help them develop their develop their own nation is what makes these colonies what makes these colonial empires to exploit these colonies. And these raw materials, natural resources, they kind of form as a market. They kind of form as raw materials to the industries that are existing in this colonial empire. And after that, after production, the final goods. So final goods need to be sold somewhere else, right? So these final deeds or the goods that have been formed in the industries of these colonial empires are again would be brought back to the colonies and sold at a huge price. So here, first of all, the raw materials does belong to colonies. Then the economic transaction also does belong to colonies. Now you are preparing this item in your industrially revolutionized this country. It could be a much cheaper price, and also the raw materials also you got it a cheaper, free in fact. So, and in a way, after that, what you're doing is like you are indirectly again dropping those finished products in the colonies, and the colonies had to buy it at a very higher price. So indirectly you are benefiting. You are benefiting like 100 times, 200 times. Then what could they have actually worth it? So that's how the things go on in colonial uh, prospects, and it overlooks the political aspects and dominance of rulers within the colonies. So this will look at only the economic prospects and the industrial development. This would rather turn a blind eye to the political aspects and the dominance of the rulers within the countries, within the colonies. Now the broader point of view says that state subjected to political, economic, and intellectual of a non-European country. So state is subjected to all these factors of a non-European country, as in society, as in what do we call the colonies. So this is how they exert their pressure through all the dimensions. So the colonialism means the domination of them aspects of social, economic, and political policies of a colony country. It is determined by the philosophy and policies of a foreign land and their self-interest in global politics. So the colonialism, in a way, is differs. It does differ from colonial powers to colonial powers. It does differ from the colonies to colonies. Like, because in some colonies you could be going for exploitation of raw materials. In some colonies you could be going for exploitation of power, man force. So all these things will vary from colony to colony. That's how you should remember it from two prospects, narrow view and broad view. Then origin and development. So origin, where did it all begin and what did it develop into? So where did it all begin? It began in Egypt, Phoenicians, Greeks, and Romans to show their strength and domination. So they just see it as a resource of showing their power and also the supplier of raw materials. So it all started with Egyptians, Phoenicians, and Greeks and Romans in a way to just show their or assert their dominance in outside world. And Phoenician was a maritime mercantile culture, so which spanned across Mediterranean from 1550 to 300 BC. Then Greeks and Persians went on acquiring land, which was later followed by Romans in Mediterranean, North Africa, and West Asia. Then Arabs conquered Middle East, North Africa, parts of Asia. Then in 9th century, it saw a domination of Byzantine Empire. So this is how the colonial powers have been exerting the pressure in various other geographical entities. So these geographical entities, if you remember well and good, so like what all countries have participated, how these countries have tried to exert their pressure. So all these things were going on. Then age of exploration. So age of exploration is to establish British colonies or modern colonies by 15th century. So age of exploration is in the name itself, like exploring the things that are around you. So this exploration is to understand the things that are around you. This has begun to establish modern colonies by 15th century. Now Spain, Portuguese, French, British, Danish, Swedish, American, German, Russian, Argentina, and Japanese. So these are all the colonies which have been very famous and exerting their power. Then Second World War. So if you understand, colonialism has been happening, but there has to be an end. See, the colonies cannot go for a lifetime to without not protesting. So at certain point of time, what do we call? They might have been very exhausted with the colonial powers, and they wanted to establish their political structure, right? So this all started after the World War II, where the decolonization concept have come into the picture, where the colonies previously ruled by the European Empire have started to fight for their independence. So, in a view of fighting for their independence, these countries have got freedom from the external sovereign authority. Now, next three era of colonization started diminishing. So, why it started diminishing? Because the countries have started to uh, get independence. They have started to go away from the clutches of colonial empire, and they wanted the power and economic resources to them. They don't want to be exerted of power by the colonial empires. And three stages of decolonization or fall of colonial empires have went on. So first one is advancement and influence of capitalism, which became a real engine from the global political system. So this advancement and influence of capitalism, the capitalism in colonialism has led or paved way for the capitalism of today's generation that we see, and it became a real engine of political global system. So capitalism was a new age thing that became famous, and the countries have been getting favored by this capitalism. So the advancement and influence of capitalism, which became real life engine, they have started to change. Then the radical changes that were witnessed by the world in metropolis in their social, economic, and political spheres. So, in a way, with this colonialism or decolonialism, the societies have started to exert their pressure both socially, economically, and in political spheres, and the rise of new middle class have started. So, what is this rise of new middle classes? Basically, the what do we call, the education has created a new, what do we call, a new class. So this new class have started to exert their or assert their dominance in the world economy, and they came to be like the middle class notion have changed. Then advancement of science and technology in industrial sector, then historical developments and influential leaders of their colonies and participated in freedom struggle decided the fate of colonial empire. So that's what I'm talking about. Like many colonies had not uh, been exerting their power. They have been fighting for their freedom. But the advancement in science and technology and industrial sector has also led for the colonies to be left alone. That's why the post-modernism, the and those Cold War era has saw the decolonization movements and decolonization things in industrial and in international space. Then historical development and influential leaders of the colonies and their participation in freedom struggle decided the fate of colonial empires. Then Karl Marx mentioned only two slogans of colonialism. One is trade monopoly and another one is free trade. So India, sorry. So the Karl Marx, he mentions two types of colonialism. This colonialism either be you doing a monopoly trade, like the state has control, or it's a free trade where you are free to do upon accepting some of the things. Then third stage of financial trade will was added by R.P. Dutt. So he says financial imperialism. Then Samir Amin and Nancy Shoemaker has supported R.P. Dutt's view. So what happens in this is three stages do not occur in a pure concrete form. They may overlap and develop upon each other. So they differ from colony to another colony, and Egypt experienced only the first and the second stages. Indonesia experienced only first stage. In India, third stage has been never taken off. So these Samir Amin and Nancy Shoemaker, they have analyzed this financial imperialism in Indian space, or like all over the world. So they say that this, whatever the theory that has to stay, these do not occur over a period. So they take a lot of time in getting themselves glued, and the ideas or the thoughts that may have come up with. will overlap with each other, and also they differ. The colonial empires and their exerting power will differ from one nation to another as differently. And Egypt experienced the only first and second stages of the colonial empire, and Indonesia never experienced only the first stage, and India, the third phase, has never taken off, like the finance imperialism. So the first stage is called monopoly of trade storage. So what happens in this monopoly of state storage is monopoly of trade stage upon was to tap Indian resources cheaply by East Indian Company. It's in the name itself, monopoly of the trade stage. Then European countries fought relentlessly for themselves. Then they started political conquest to curtail trading active in Indian traders and establishment of political power. The large revenue surplus amount was transferred to the colony. So this is how one of the primary features or the first stage of colonialism. So they, for them, monopoly of trade is everything. So like control of countries through trade. So that's it. That is also a very crucial thing. And they started the political conquest to curtail the trading activities. So all these things have been going on. Then it is called by Dadabhai Naoroji as drain of wealth. You might have read this drain of wealth in your history class, so don't tell me that you haven't come across it. So the drain of wealth has happened. So what happens in this is Great Britain got 2.3% of national income from its Indian colony alone. So imagine the Britain colonies all over the world. So there's a saying in for the British colonial empire that sun never sets in their colony. So why sun never sets in the colonies means they have from east to west. So all these things have been controlled by these people. So that's why they say it, sun never sets. So sun means it is so vastly spread from one point of equator to the one point of globe to the other point of globe. Even after shifting this timeline issue, the 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 things that they do not substantiate, so and the witnesses the crucial colonial oppression. So there is no substantial changes witnessed in the field of administration. Now what happens is communication, transport, agriculture, industrial production, all sorts of business control or economic system are neglected. So why would you think that a colonial empire would develop your economic system, would develop putting those trains or anything? See, if they are putting railway tracks, if you are establishing a railway stations, all these things, it means that these colonial empires, these colonial entities have not had their presence. So they wanted to build it for themselves, but in the name of government that has formed to them. So that's how the things has went on. Britain got 2 to 3% of its national income from India alone. And there were substantial changes witnessed in the field of administration. So the transport and communication, agriculture, industrial production, sorts of business control and economic system, education or intellectual fields were neglected. So this is how the things go on in first stage. And transport and communication, agriculture, industrial sector, portions of business control or economic regime, education or intellectual fields were also neglected. So what happens is some of the changes which are at like visible, okay, which are visible, which are eye catchy, which could be discussed upon or which could have a positive impact. So all these things are being controlled. So all these things have been only these things are changed because see if you this you can talk about like PR or an advertisement. So what happens in an advertisement, like they make those advertisements for you to be those for them to be catchy and for you to remember. So same thing like this in colonialism also. The military higher official, the top level things are only changed, then superimposed over traditional system of economy and polity. So these colonial empires have tried to influence the colonies through their what do we call missionary propagation, through their education or through their influence on religion. So they have said to impose their own things on polity and economy of the colonies. Then idea of not one of the development, there was no criticism in understanding the conventional values, rights, religion, and citizen. The conventional system of learning was reassured. Hence, the administration was carried on. So what happens is ideology was one of the important development, and there was no criticism or understanding like why they act as a way as such. So the conventional systems of learning and reassured administration was carried on in vernacular language only. So here also they have seen that exploitation, that differential treatment they have started to really create the differences to increase the gap between the citizens. So the second stage of colonialism could be seen as a free trade stage. So what happens in free trade state is opposed exploitation as a sort of appropriation of surplus of lower class because they believed that it might destroy the goose that laid the eggs. And also the commercial activities of the bourgeoisie in the colonies focused only on market access because for their factory mere merchandise. So this is also very important thing that you can understand, like how this thing has evolved over a period. Then rise in exports from colony would additionally give them advantage of paying high salaries for the officials. So why do you think that the officials or the original settlers of the land were sent, sorry, the colonial settlers of the land were sent to the colonies, new colonies, are made to work and are made to show progress? Why do you think means if they do good work, they will be rewarded more? So that's why this money ka lalach, this power ka greed, everything would make them, what do we call it? Everything would make them engage in doing such things. So this is how uh, things work in the colonial empire. And economic and economic system which can be remodeled, and political social framework to alter exposition, global laissez-faire economy of financial system was to be unified with colony, and trade to be freed from all regulations. So do you think it's going to be possible that trade should be free from all regulations and tariffs? Especially if you look at now, the Trump government has been very vocal about trade tariffs. So, and they started to impose the tariffs upon the countries they see in. So, the the system of transport and communication was developed to facilitate the movement of huge quantities of raw materials from to ports for export. So, if you read an Indian nation movement, you might have come across, I'm sorry, something. You might have come across a concept that the Britishers have built railways. So the Britishers have built so and so things. So Britishers have done this, Britishers have done that. So why do you think that they have done those things? It's because if the railways are well built, they can carry huge number of raw materials from a corner from a jungle to the ports. So if you look at the railways are also they go move outwards. So the railways are also constructed very, very intelligently that they connect the ports. They connect the port cities of India because through ports, the raw materials would be exported to their parent nation. And also, if you look at something like them building schools, them constructing any of the things, it's because it is for their kids that they have been doing. It is for their betterment of living that these things have been going on, but in a way these have led to the development of the colonies also, which is indirectly which has done, but which has been done very indirectly. But you can also understand that the development to a certain position has been continued. Then capitalist merchandising relationships were being implemented. So the mercantile system and the thing that has been overpowered, like the trade and the tip-offs. So the capitalist system of this mercantilism has come into the picture, and the countries or the colonial empires or the colonial empires and the colonies have started to exert their dominance. Then the modern education was introduced to provide men who would become socially equitable in new administration. Then westernization would raise the demand of foreign goods. So this is a classic analysis. So just like I said before, like railways were built so that their raw materials would be brought from the remote areas to the seaports. They have introduced the concept of modern education to the colonies, to the members of the colony. So you can ask why? Why are they doing this social service? They need not pay the CSR, just like the new industries that they pay the CSR, like social responsibility. But social service responsibility, but this corporate service responsibility, I'm sorry. So but this country is but this colonial powers, they introduced modern education so that the citizens would learn the western culture, and the demands for their items would decrease in the colonies. So this was their internal agenda to develop this transport, to develop, to establish schools, to bring up this modern education into the scenario. And the concept of liberal imperialism was encouraged in pol- political field. So the concept of vote system, the democracy, and the contesting elections, all these things have also come into the picture. Now, mid 19th century witnessed significant changes in the attributes of the global capitalist economy, and this also saw supremacy of England. So, the world saw supremacy of England in world politics because of the vast expanse of British colonial powers, and this has led to the rapid spread of industrialization. And with industrialization, the with the raw materials, with industrialization and the raw materials, the items were manufactured very heavily. And now the thing was like they were struggling. Now the next thing to tick off on the point is to find markets to sell to sell their items. So this struggle for market materials and raw materials have also led for the rise of English colonialism. Then these countries have colonies with an advantage, have domination, investing their excess capital, and helped the colonial matters to deflect political dissent at home and impart a commonality of interest. And despotism was a new ideology because colonial people were seen as an infants. So these are all the things that you can understand. Then next one would be the colonialism has two sorts of contradictions. The first one is external. So what is an external contradiction? It is between the colonial people and the colonial system. It is identified in the numerous anti-imperial movements. Then what is internal contradiction? So internal contradiction is between the colonial people and colonial capitalist groups identified in the boycott of the foreign goods and encouraged native. So when the raw materials were coming very rapidly for looking for a markets in the colonial empires, in the colonies, these liberal colonial capitalists have said to have rejected these things because they wanted to encourage the native goods to be sold, and the industrialization have drained their wealth. So in a way, they have rejected that. Then colonialism was unable to absorb colonial capital or increase its export of raw materials. Now, efforts failed when the native people were exposed. So they were exposed to the kinds of information and exploitation that has been going against themselves. Then colonialism destroyed economies of these colonies, which could absorb capital investment to any considerable extent. And it failed to create additional demand for the goods, yes. In some sort, the other older sorts of exploitation continued. And India, the first two stages existed and the third stage did not happen. Then read the causes of colonialism. So, what are the causes of colonialism? Discovery of new sea route, yes. Advancements in fast sailing ships, innovation in technology, industrial revolution. So, all these are causes. Next one, what has this causes led to is like discovery of America by Columbus, which also led for establishment of colonies in America by Spain and Portuguese. Then discovery of sea route to India by Portuguese Vasco da Gama, and establishing a Portuguese colony in India. Then next one is economic consideration. So economic consideration was their main motto that natural resources procured from the colonies helped the colonial empires in improving their industries. Now next one is Industrial Revolution 1750. It led to colonization because it gave the motive and ability to colonize Africa and Asia. Then inventions began in Industrial Revolution. So this is how the Industrial Revolution has went. Then imperial tendency. So the 17th and 18th centuries had surplus population. So the imperial tendency was that these colonial powers have got huge, enormous amount of population, the overpopulation. So these colonies are the places where need to be occupied. So the colonial empires have sent their original citizens to these colonies in order to control their resources due to population explosion. So this is how the things have been going on. Then social factor important contributed to colonialism, poverty, employment, home displacement, and social displacement. Then these problems developed because people not at all could be observed by new societies and establishment of settler colonies in Tunisia. This is like South Africa, and surplus investment in Afro-Asian nations. Capitalists wanted to invest their social surplus outside of the mainland because they wanted to they wanted to expand. So when looking to expand, you look for colonies. So the colonies are easy money-making machines. So that's why it all happened. Then this was also one of the factors that contributed to the colonialism. So this is how the things have uh, been going down in colonial empire. Then next one is to educate backward countries. Colonialism was not just grabbing territories, but a form of humanitarianism. So this is kind of this is known as the white man's burden. So the white man thinks that it is their responsibility. Yeah, how irony of it. It is the responsibility to establish or to connection between like they think it's the responsibility to develop these colonies because the colonies they think that they have been living in this dark era, ice age type technology and no civilization, no proper civilizations. So these people used to think that it is their responsibility, that they have been establishing schools, colleges, hospitals, and they have been exerting the power so that these colonies would thrive. So, and also USA was responsible for educating and civilizing the native people in now control. So that's why they call it a white man's burden. Remember what is white man's burden? It is very important. Then colonies are treated as a pride of the country. So the colonies are treated as a pride because they think that whatever the countries that has the uh, higher number of colonies, they would be treated as uh, uh, like uh, like they used to see that we control these many colonies, so that's why we are very powerful. Like that, they were protecting themselves. Then it was championed by England, Portugal, France, and Germany, which led to the growth of colonialism and unhealthy tussle among colonies. Then unstable political conditions, no political structure in Asia and Africa have led these colonial powers to exert or establish their colonialisms. Then it was utilized by European countries for establishing their own power. Then colonialism colonialism, so how it all started in different countries. So first one in Asian colonies, 18th and 19th century it has started by France, England, Netherlands and Portugal. India, Vasco da Gama, 1498. You all might have known this by now. Then colonies were established by Portuguese in Goa, Damandiyo, Dutch and French, England in other parts. Then due to power politics, supremacy led for 200 years by England. So by England. Then Southeast Asia, Portugal was the first country to establish a colony. Then Dutch defeated Portuguese in 1640. So in a way, this colony of Southeast Asia have come under Dutch. So the Ceylon, Java, Sumatra, Bali were colonies of Dutch. Then Dutch Empire lost it to Ceylon and England. So Burma was also occupied, and these all countries have come under England. Then 1819, English got Hong Kong from China. Then large portions of Manchuria came under authority of Russian Empire. Then Kaicho was occupied by Germans. Then Formosa is occupied by Japan. This. I think this was some important MCQ in some of the competitive exams. So it's well and good if you remember these things. Then Central Asia, so England and Russia were colonies. So Tashkent, Bukhara, and Samarkand were captured by Russia. Then southern parts of Persia under England, northern Persia under Japan. Then Africa, North America. So then when it comes to Africa, so the North America was mostly by Greece and Rome. So the Henry Portuguese is a navigator. Henry, he's a Portuguese navigator in suburbans. So it led for the sub-Saharan African colonization in 15th century. It was started by him. So in 16th and 17th century, the exploration was kind of limited because they were trying to expand in the other areas, so other directions. Then interior of Africa, mostly it was colonized by the Arab slave traders like the Togoland and Cameroon. It is by David Livingstone. Belgium ruler Leopold created free state by sending its powerful army. So Congo was under Belgium. Then 1884 it was occupied by Germany. Then after World War One, the Germans had to surrender their colonies to the Allied forces. So that's how the Tunisia, Madagascar, and Algeria came under French colonies, and it was occupied by French. So France sent 11,000 people to settle in Algeria. Then French occupied Madagascar, Ivory Coast, Morocco, Senegal, Dahomey, and Sahara. So these are the things that you should remember. There's no easy way out. Then next comes Angola, Mozambique, Tripoli, and Abyssinia. So Angola and Mozambique by Portuguese. Then Eritrea, Somaliland by Italy. Then Libya, Tripoli under influence of Italy. Then Spain occupied Canary Island, then East, West, and North, South Africa. So what happens here is it came under influence of England during Cecil Rhodes. Then Rhodesia, Nyasaland, Cape Colony also became English colonies. Then Gold Coast in 1885 also English colony. Then Uganda, Kenya, Somaliland. Then Boer War. So Boer War, it's between for a Orange Free State for England. So Boer War also you can remember well and good. Then end of colonialism, like political alertness of the people who would want to be oppressed for so long, because oppression would have been usually be there. then free press and Western education, growing national aspirations, and future failure of capitalism. So all these things have led for the end of colonialism. Then there are certain aspects which have put the positive impact of colonialism. It would be either a positive impact on the colonial empires or the colonies. So the wealth was collected from the colonies and made these colonial empires very prosperous. And this gave a big boost to industrial revolution. Yes, then colonies provided a safe haven for this excess population, yes, that we have seen earlier. Then they transported this population to colonies as settlers. Then many able administrators, seasoned military generals were appointed, and the heads of the army chiefs. So all these things have uh, been very useful for these colonial powers. Then the political hold over the colonies have led for the economic exploitation also, or strengthening their economy. Then it enhanced the prestige of the mainland. Yes, because I have got so many colonies, so I'm very powerful that you should be scared of me. Like that, this mentality have come into picture. Then intense suppression by colonizers fostered a kind of unity and fought together to overthrow the colonial power. So this is a positive thing for the colonies. But of course, the colonies have had their exploitation for so long years, and it was a generational shift that the togetherness, oneness have united and raised the sentiments of nationalism. Then colonial powers tried hard to improve education, road, rails in their occupied colonies. The colonialism generated affinity towards ideologies of nationalism, democracy, and constitutionalism. Positive thing. Then Christian missionaries helped the people of the colonies, like with English education and English language. Now the negative impact. Negative impact is it's all like exploited the colonies up straight, too much exploitation. Then economic health of the colonies got ruined, their political power got grabbed, the colonies were left. So it is said that these colonies have been left because there was nothing more to extract. So there was nothing more left to extract for the raw materials by these colonial powers. So that is sadly one of the uh, thing that the decolonization have started. Then economic health of the colonies got ruined. Then continuous wars to maintain sovereignty over native princesses. Yes, because the native rulers of the colonies did not kept quiet, so they had this. Uh, they fought against these colonial empires to restore their powers, but did not happen over a period. And colonialism encouraged slavery among its colonies. Yeah, so this is one of the worst feature that it has went for. And colonialism built walls, segregated people as the rulers and the rule. So these colonial companies, colonial empires, they smartly have exerted their power or control over their colonies with the policies of divide and rule, carrot and stick. So it's better to keep them divided than united, because if they are united, they would throw you out at any point of time. So it's better to keep the society in the colonies divided by the colonial empire. So this is how the power tactics that they have used. Then policy, yeah, divide rule of policy. Then colonialism was a product of its time, yeah, because those times needed it, and they say it's just happened in because the times were commanding. And colonies got independence from grip of their colonizers after struggles, or like after a lot of exploitation. Years have been went in. Then summary would be like what is colonialism. So it had a huge impact, no doubt, on social, economic, and political spheres for the colonies, and it also led to the political subjugation and economic exploitation, social and cultural degradation of the colonial people by the colonial powers. So that's how the things have went through. And the decline of colonization is also known as decolonization. During the decolonization, also the world was shifting on a shifting axis. It was a unipolar world. So these things have created the shift. the radical dynamic shift in the power structure outside of the world. So this is how the things have went, and we have discussed about the colonialism and the power. So I hope you understood the things. So if there's an answer, you can write all the three stages: consequences, efforts, then positive impact, negative impact, then define basically what is colonialism and various different countries that have seen this colonial power, etc. So all these things, I hope you read it if you're attending the next class. So see, so if got any doubts, so if you've got any doubts, I hope you all understood the class. So yeah, so I hope it is all clear, and I expect you to read the next class and come and see you in next class.